Hello, everybody. Thanks for watching. I will try to live stream a podcast in a few minutes. I say trying because, I've got internet from Vodafone and they're being Vodafone again. I had no upstream whatsoever for the last 45 minutes. It seems to have fixed itself now, but we'll see. So, the plan is what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get a drink and then we'll settle down to record an episode of The Private Citizen, where today I'm planning to talk about the Cyberbunker um, court case that has started yesterday in Trier, and I was there. And then I will also give an update of the current situation with coronavirus stuff here in Düsseldorf. But before we can do that, I need a drink. So I'll be back in a few minutes and then we can hopefully get this show on the road. See you in a bit. So here I'm back. It looks like we're actually not dropping any frames, so that's good. So maybe, wish me luck. Toi toi toys, we say in Germany. Maybe I can even record this podcast. Right. So if you've joined me, I'm gonna do a recording of the Private Citizen today. I'm gonna talk about the Cyberbunker trial in Trier, where I was yesterday, and then a little bit on the current Rona situation in Düsseldorf, because I'm in a hotspot now. Hotspot! But before we do that, let's do the thing I always want to do now. Let's do some tests. Let's see if this. Let's see if my audio interface works. I don't wanna duplicate that problem again. So let's do some test recording here. 1 2 1 2. I'm talking.
It can happen to a private citizen. It is happening.
It is happening. Oh, well, if I drop it in there, that's certainly not how it works. What the fuck? Okay. Let's try that again. Hello, 1 2 3 1 2 3. Okay.
It can happen to a private citizen. It is happening.
Yeah, it's a great time to be a podcaster. That's all I can say.
1 2 3.
Very, very proud of.
With your own network to distribute yourself without having to go through Podbean or any of these operations going, oh, we don't think your podcast is suitable anymore.
That cracks me up every time. Okay, let's see. Let's listen to this. Let's try that again. Hello, 1 2 3 1 2 3. Okay.
It can happen to a private citizen. It is happening.
With your own network to distribute yourself without having operations going, oh, we don't think your podcast is suitable anymore.
That cracks me up every time. Okay, let's see. Okay, that sounds like it's working. That sounds like we can record a podcast. I just set up the microphone in a way that I like. I still need to optimize this whole thing a little bit. Then I also changed my my desk around a bit because I had the Elite set up, and it's just too much space right now. So everything is off. Everything is off. But I think we can do this. As usual, I'm gonna keep an eye on the chat in case you've got some input. I'll be weaving that into the show. Otherwise, yeah. Sit back, relax, get a drink, and have some fun while I'll try to inform you. And there's probably going to be some ranting. So you know the drill. Let's do this, right? Let's record a podcast here. How's it go again? Push recording. That would be a good start. So let's do this. Why the hell is that not sticking? Okay. Let's do that again. Take two. Take two, everybody. You're listening to The Private Citizen, your weekly privacy podcast defending your right to have something to hide. This is episode 43 for Tuesday, the 20th of October 2020, the Cyberbunker case. Hello everybody, I'm Fab, your host, coming to you live from the Rona hotspot of Düsseldorf, where we're dropping like flies. Yes, this is The Private Citizen, live from Düsseldorf. How are you all doing? You're getting this episode a day early, you notice. I'm gonna talk about the Cyberbunker case that happened here in Germany. I'm gonna explain what that is, why it's interesting. Bring you the episode a day early because the case was opened yesterday in Trier. I was there and I thought it's kind of news, and you probably won't hear about it on any other podcast. Probably not on for a while. Probably not on a. I'm certainly not an English-speaking one, so I thought I might as well be right out of the gate. And then we're going to talk a bit about the coronavirus situation in Germany, which is something, I wanted to wind that coverage down, but, now it's the second wave is coming. So it's gonna be, everything's going to shit. And it seems like we have to tighten the screws, and so I can't escape that topic any longer. So we're back to the coronavirus stuff. And as usual, if you're listening to this, you can follow along. You can go to privatecitizen.press, where there will be show notes with everything I discuss. Today, the show notes probably won't be that. I usually put everything in the show notes I can, so you have links and you can follow along. And you can, check the sources. As I always like to point out, this podcast is about letting you think for yourself. And I think to do that, it is very important that I give you all the information I'm operating with so that you can do that. You can check on me and also send me feedback, which you also have to go to privatecitizen.press because all the links are on there, and you can write me emails or contact me in other ways. And of course, we're going to talk a bit about some feedback by listeners on the show a bit later. But yeah, today the show notes probably won't be that full because I'm going after memory. I'm not doing this show from sources on the internet, but I was personally in Trier yesterday at the case, when they opened the proceedings. So I'm just gonna go by that. But still, privatecitizen.press, everything important on this episode and all the other episodes on there. There's also like a little news section where I dump in links that I'm reading for the show, which is some people seem to like. I get quite a lot of visits on that. So, if you're interested in that kind of stuff, you want to kind of read along and maybe guess what the next episode will be about, then that's your right. That's a good place to go. Yeah, you're getting this episode a day early. As I said, I just wanted to get this information out and do this as quickly as possible. I'm not sure I'll do another episode this week. I'd love to. I got some topics lined up. I'm just not sure I can get it into my schedule. But, you'll never know. I'll try. I'll if I can make it happen, I will make it happen. Yeah, and with that, probably I need to play this jingle again that I stole from No Agenda. This is broken. It keeps doing that. I need to fix that, but I'll have to play that in again because otherwise it doesn't work. I can probably fix that in post. Yeah, I'll just play the jingle. This is what you get when you watch it live. You get all my mistakes as well. I got myself a case of Wuhan flu. I don't know what I am supposed to do. Didn't know I had it when I gave it to you. Now we all got the Wuhan flu. not just as some kind of advanced warning that we'll be talking about the coronavirus. I don't know if I still need to do this kind of thing, but back in the day when there was a lot of coronavirus coverage on this show, people were getting fatigued, and they were skipping coronavirus episodes. So I was pointing out in the beginning, and I'm going to talk about that. Let me know. Send me some feedback. Let me know if you still want that, if you like that. I just like playing that jingle because I love it. It's great. Thanks again to the folks from the Great No Agenda podcast, who had, their producers had that made for them. I just like it. Yeah, I tried to wind down the coronavirus coverage. Oh, before we get any further, I'll get myself a drink. I've got some lovely. I discovered this Franziskaner Kellerbier. Usually, the Franziskaner is my favorite wheat beer. Of course, now it's getting winter, so it's not really a time for wheat beer. Wait, I'll have you be part of this. So it's like an ad, and then it's just missing the. It's usually it's my favorite wheat beer normally, but wheat beer time's kind of over. So I found this Keller beer. It's another cool thing. Everybody does a Keller beer, which is kind of, I don't know if you're not from Germany. I don't know if they really have that outside of Germany. It's kind of like this rough and ready kind of beer. It's supposed to be when they're brewing beer, when it's not completely finished and you just get something from the cellar directly, a little bit for the brewer themselves. I kind of like it. Anyway, this is kind of nice. It's the first time I'm having this. I had another bottle earlier when I was cooking. It's kind of nice. Yeah, and you should probably get some advance warning now for an incoming rant because I am pissed off. And so the reason why I want to talk about the coronavirus again, I talked about this on the podcast a lot. When the first big wave was happening, and obviously talked about all the privacy problems and the civil liberty problems, and now it's getting completely out of control. Düsseldorf has today. There's a new regulation. It's not really a law. It's just a regulation that come into effect where now on certain streets, a lot of them, the biggest streets, one of them is Kölner Straße, which is, I'm in Oberbilk, which is right around the corner here. I basically live on Kölner Straße. You now have to wear a mask on the street outside. And this is where I stop agreeing with stuff. I had this discussion early on in the podcast, had a great debate with Alex when we were talking about flatten the curve. And I've always maintained I'm not quite convinced on how effective the masks are. I'm personally, knowing a lot of people who work in hospitals who wear masks all the time and have always worn masks. I'm convinced that they do something. I just don't know how much, and I don't think anybody knows. I've looked a lot at the scientific evidence we have, especially for coronavirus, and it's not convincing me. But I was always of the opinion, look, it's gonna be, it makes probably sense when you're inside, when you're close to other people, and when you can't do the distancing and whatever. And it might protect you to some degree. We don't really know to what degree, but fine. On this case, I'm with the people who say better safe than sorry. It's a certain price to pay as far as civil liberties go. But they were doing they weren't doing laws, and they were doing, like in Germany at least, they were doing these workaround things where basically they can't really force you to wear a mask. So they're like, okay, we'll force the supermarkets and shops to enforce it on you because they can. It's a private place, right? They can say who can enter and who can't. And if we force them with fines to make sure that their customers are wearing masks, then we're basically forcing you to wear a mask. It's kind of workaround. It gets around the whole constitutional issue, I'm guessing. And that was kind of okay. I was okay with it. I wasn't convinced that this is what we need, but I was like, okay, this is like a compromise. People think that is important. The general public seems to agree, or at least months ago seems to have agreed with this. I was like, okay, let's, that's something I can do. But now I'm fed up. Now I'm drawing the line. This is absolutely bullshit. We're talking complete bullshit here. They're now forcing you, and this is not any shops. This is the city government of Düsseldorf. It's actually been. I read today that it was a directive given out by the federal state, but the federal state has no jurisdiction, so the cities have to do it. So Düsseldorf said, okay, these are the places where you have to wear a mask when you're outside. And just to tell you how absolutely idiotic and scatterbrained and idiotic this, so that yesterday they were starting to put up signs apparently, and today, this morning, they said, well, this is now the rules. So the press went and said, okay, what happens when you're smoking? What happens when you're eating? Are there exceptions? How do you plan to enforce this? Are there any fines? And the city officials who made this rule, I'm just going to call it a rule because I don't think it's a law. They said, we don't know. We can't tell you. I mean, okay, let's just pass some rules, make some really draconian rules. But the first question people ask us about it, we can't answer. I think I know why they can't answer, because as far as the are you going to be fined are concerned. So at this point, so if I go out and they catch me and I'm not wearing a mask on Kölner Straße, it's all well. You know, they can tell me wear a mask, I don't. Now, if they do something, at the point where then I'm saying they, so it would be the police, or in Germany we have the Ordnungsamt. They're kind of like the civil order office, you would translate. You know, they're like they're usually the people that deal with cars that are parked in the wrong place, stuff like that. And you know, generally hygiene in restaurants and stuff like that. Or public disturbances, but they can't arrest you or something. I always have to call the police for that. But anyway, let these people, if they say, you know, you're not allowed to, and now either the police arrests me, or unlikely in Germany, you don't get arrested that easily, or they pass a fine, right? At this point is when they will get into trouble, but because that's the point when you can basically say, no, I dispute this. I think that I have rights as a citizen. I don't think you can force me to wear a mask, and then they get into trouble. Now, we talked about how there are laws in Germany, the Infektionsschutzgesetz, you know, all of this I talked about on the podcast very early. It coincided with me basically starting the podcast, all of this. And I looked into this, and some of this is, you know, Infektionsschutzgesetz, the new version is kind of from 2001. So it's relatively new. I didn't know a lot about this stuff. But, you know, there's reasons and established law and established procedure where the government can take away certain rights, especially when the protection of other people is concerned. And, you know, we're talking a pandemic here, and it's you know, I think debatable how dangerous it is, but okay. The state assumes it's very dangerous, so they can do things to protect the citizens. Now, the problem is that all of these laws, especially Infektionsschutzgesetz, is kind of based on scientific results. They need to, you know, well, the government can say, okay, or the city government, whoever, they can say, we think this is important, and then just do it. But then they get into trouble if somebody sues them for it, because then they will have to show that this was justified. I mean, you can take away rights, individual rights from individual citizens to protect the public. That's very established in Germany. But then you have to prove that what you're protecting them from is dangerous. Maybe, okay, I think they can do that. There are enough people dying of COVID. It's obvious that you can argue that that's dangerous. But they'll have to show that their protections are actually working, which I don't think you can if you say you have to wear a mask outside. Because I've been looking into this. I mean, if I'm wrong here, and I can be, I mean, the problem is there's so much shit published on this. If you just look for COVID and some keyword on PubMed, you just get more papers that you can ever read in your lifetime. So, you know, I might be missing stuff, but I've researched this a lot in the last few months. If I'm wrong, privatecitizen.press, contact, email me, whatever. You know, there's contact details on there. You can also do it anonymously. I have a whistleblower contact form, all of that stuff. But as far as I can tell, you know, there's scarce evidence on how well masks protect us anyway. There's no scientific consensus on how this virus is spread at all. We don't know if it's spread by droplets alone, by aerosols alone, or by aerosols and droplets. How big the droplets are, as in the droplets that fall down when you sneeze, as well as the droplets in the aerosols. There's many studies. There's lots of different results, and we don't know, like what the ratio is. Is it spread mostly by aerosols, mostly by droplets that fall? There's no clear scientific consensus on that. I think what we know is that you do not get infected when you're outside. There is not one well reported. Well, there's reported cases, but there's no real scientific data on a single case where somebody got infected outside. That is, of course, understandable because it's kind of hard to prove that this person was infected at that moment, but we do not have any scientific data that we can depend on that tells us you can even get infected outside. And, to kind of research that, you need to know how the infection mechanism works first, and we haven't worked that out yet. So I'm pretty sure that droplets is out. Because, we're talking outside on the street, so we're talking more than a meter away, which in some countries is already the physical, I call it physical distancing, not social distancing, because it's not social distancing, the physical distancing distance, right? If you're talking meter 50, you will not have like coughing, the breathing out droplet infection. And I really don't see how outside you can have an aerosol infection either, because you have wind, you have humidity, you have the particles getting blown away. I'm prepared to believe that you can possibly get infected outside, especially if you get very close to somebody. But this order makes no fucking sense. From the beginning, the WHO, the CDC, the German Robert Koch Institute, they have all said you need to wear masks when you can't physically distance. And I can't fucking physically distance on the street. Now the problem is, and Düsseldorf has designated certain zones, Kölner Straße being one of them. I can tell you exactly why, because this is a road that is dominated by, how to say this politically correct, a large part of the inhabitants of this part of the city are descendants of people who came into Germany, probably second and third generation, lots of Turkish people originally from Turkey, from Algeria, southern European immigrants, and this is like, they've been living, most of them are German, most of them are kids from immigrants or even third generation, but they have a different cultural background, and it's well documented that some people in some cultural backgrounds don't adhere to the social distancing as well as standard, I say standard, Northern Europeans, Germans, Scandinavians, people like that. We are very tied up the ass, following rule followers, and I think that's their problem. But they can't say, hey, you're like a son of a Turkish immigrant, so you have to wear a mask on the street because you're obviously not social distance or physical distancing. So they have to, obviously they have to have that rule for everybody, but it just makes no sense. It's not supported by any scientific evidence, and it is completely bullshit anyway, because like most of the people we're talking about that are not adhering to those rules, what they're doing is, you tell them to wear a mask, they wear it like over their mouth and leave their nose free or something. And I'm done with this now. I am done. I don't care. And this may sound harsh, but I don't care how many cases there are, and I don't care how many people are dying. At the point where you're doing these rules and you're saying, we're doing this for the science and for the best of everybody, but you're not basing these rules on any concernable scientific data, anything that people have researched that you, and I know, if you look up COVID on PubMed, you find everything. You find results of everything. But I'm talking about scientists we know, right? I'm not talking about the paper by like, let's be racist here, people will probably say. I'm not talking about paper from 3 Chinese people from Wuhan that you've never heard about, and that have never published before, right? We have studies. We have a brilliant study from Munich, from one of the first outbreaks, at the Webasto headquarter thing in Munich, Munich University. Lots of people. Drosten was involved in this paper. It chronicles the outbreak. They did very well research, contact tracing of everybody. They figured out where everybody got it, where they're isolated, how likely it was for the people they isolated with to catch. People got this because they were in a small office together, or they were standing right next to each other at like a buffet, right? Not outside on the street. There's good evidence. There's the Heinsberg study by like one of the first virologists who actually really researched this virus. This guy who also, he and his team found out, the symptoms that everybody knows now, that you lose your sense of smell and taste. That he was the first to figure that out. That was in the study. They took air samples. They took, swabs all over the houses of people infected. They asked them, they had huge questionnaires, asked them what kind of symptoms they got, when they got, they did all this research. And they were actually the first to say this is actually not spread by biofilms on something. We can't find it in the air, can't find it in air samples and stuff like that. So we have good research. We know. And these guys are just making rules. And on top of it, they're like fucking rules that will not hold up to any real scrutiny. They will not hold up to a constitutional challenge. Of course, for that to be, it actually had to be a law, and they would have to find people. I think what they're just trying is they just cow people into being afraid and follow the rules. And I will then, probably not have to follow the rules because I know that they'll never ever find anybody and there won't be any consequences. But I'm fed up with this anyway now because they tried this. First they did the background thing where around the corner where let's do this in like supermarkets and, let's force like the supermarket owner, as I explained, they did that. And now they're pushing like that way. Make a fucking rule. If you want people to make a law, if you want people, we're a democracy, right? I voted for you fuckers. I'm paying your fucking salaries. If rent incoming, if you want to force me to wear a mask on the street, make a law. We have federal legislature. Fucking Angela Merkel, go get your fucking ministers together, draft a law, and put it through parliament. And if that goes to parliament, and if people agree to, if people are okay with it, that goes to parliament. If it then get challenged by the constitutional court, and they say it's okay, I'll wear a mask on the street, because that is how our democracy works. That's how our social system, our state works. It doesn't work with you doing like basic bullshit rules that are not based on anything. On any evidence, that are just based on some idiot politicians and some, they have no fucking clue what they're doing. We're talking, these are career politicians and fucking lifelong bureaucrats. They don't even know what PubMed is. They haven't read a paper in their life. If I gave them one, they couldn't read it because they're too fucking dumb. They can't think critically. They have no fucking clue. They're just like, oh my God, the cases are rising. We need to do something. Otherwise, it's our head. I think that's one part of it. And the other part is they just enjoy pushing people around because, it shows them that they have power. If they say, oh, everybody has to wear a rag on their face now, and then people do it, they're like, look, they do what I tell them. Fuck. This is going to be interesting. So I'll be watching this rant over. That's it. Now what's going on here. I think Düsseldorf's not the only city in Germany where this is happening. We'll see. We'll see if people just accept it. We'll see if they start finding people. We'll see if this gets challenged. in court. I mean, Germany is a country. We were discussing, before all of this bullshit, we were discussing for years if somebody, if it's teachers or state employees, right? If a teacher is like is a Muslim, right? Are they allowed to wear like traditional Muslim head covering? Is that constitutional? Is it constitutional if the state enforce his employees to not do that? Right? Can the state say, no, you have to whatever you're wearing on your head, you have to take that off, because that's we have separation between church and state, and that's a religious statement, and state employees, teachers should be. They can be religious whatever they want to be, but in private, but in their function as a teacher, they need to be neutral, unless they're a religious teacher or whatever. But teach religion. But I don't. Let's not get into that. I've never understood why we teach religion in school if you have a secular state. But let's not get into that. But is that more important, or is the personal freedom of the person who is by the Constitution guaranteed to practice their religion as they see fit? What do we do? And we could never decide on that. That was a huge constitutional problem. And now we're just going, oh, everybody wear this piece of paper on your face because we just say it helps. Fuck you. This will be very interesting. I'm guessing, I sincerely hope there will be lawsuits. If I had either money to pay a lawyer, or if I had studied, law if I could do this myself, I would start challenging this right away. I mean, it's nuts. It's nuts, and it makes no fucking sense. There's a discussion to be had, how much masks help, but we need to keep it on the basis of established scientific data. I won't say fact, because what's a fact? When it comes to, we have, sometimes it goes this way, and then you have more data, and then you find it goes the other way. Right? And if they do some research and they figure out, okay, you can get infected outside, and this is how it happens, and you'll have to actually demonstrate how it happens, and then you have to demonstrate to me how a mask helps. If you can do that, or not to me, to the public, if you can do that, then you can make that law. But you have to do that work first. You can't have the rules first, right? You need to do the proving of what you're trying to accomplish first. And that's just getting lost. Anyway, I was saying I wasn't gonna rant anymore. So that's it. That's my update on the coronavirus situation here in Düsseldorf. Yeah, it's getting really interesting. It's getting really fun, and we're probably gonna have more coronavirus stuff on the show, because if you're here for the privacy, you just have to know that once they're pushing that through, it's just all the privacy stuff is coming next. I mean, that they're already doing that, and they're already doing things that you, under the GDPR, you would have thought, oh my God, how can they do this? But no, it's a pandemic. It's actually in the GDPR. Now you can do whatever you want. You're like, why do they have to do this? So we have to keep an eye on that. So I'm not only venting here. I think this is actually really important, and I think I need to talk about this on the show, because to be honest, I don't see many other people doing it. I think this is an important public service. But to some degree, I'm probably preaching to the choir. If you haven't turned this off already, then you probably agree with me. But I still think it needs to be said. So let's move on to the topic that the title of the show is actually telling you're here for. Let's talk about the Cyberbunker case. And I've probably have to explain, because I haven't talked about it on this show. I mean, I've written about it. I've written about it in my newsletter. I do this newsletter, fab.industry/newsletter, if you're interested. It's like tech news stuff. And, the Cyberbunker thing is mostly an IT security story. So this is the story of a data center here in Germany that was, if you can believe what the police and the people investigating this is saying, was set up solely to it was a so-called bulletproof hoster, right? It was for people who are hosting things that might be illegal, and they were actually promising basically on their website, we won't cave to the police, we won't help investigative people, you're secure here. And it's such a good story because part of that was their whole setup. They had bought an old, so these people running this hoster, this bulletproof hoster, had bought an old German military Bundeswehr bunker complex in Traben-Trarbach, which is in the middle of nowhere in Rheinland-Pfalz, Rhineland-Palatia, which is, I'm in North Rhine-Westphalia. It's like a federal state further south. It's in the west. It's towards the the Belgian border and Luxembourg and places like that. And so these people had bought this bunker and built. This is why it's called Cyberbunker, and built their own data center in there, and they were hosting this and saying, they were promoting this hosting as like, it's really secure. We're in a bunker, and this whole thing went on the, I think, international news last year because they were raided by, I think, 650 officials were part of this raid, like SWAT teams, the SEK, basically counter-terrorism unit. Basically, what they did is when the people running the bunker, so in the evening it's like on the Mosel. The Mosel is a German river well known for its wine. It's like one of Germany's primary wine regions, right? It's like this river that runs in long loops, and on both sides of the river are relatively steep hills, and this is where the wine is grown. What they're called? Oh God, I have to look this up. God, what are the wine things called when they're on the, where the grapes grow? German words, Weinreben, grapevines. Yeah, it's where the vines are. Where they grow the wine. And so this bunker was like in a bend of the River Mosel. Winery, says the chat. Obviously, I'm doing this show live again, streaming live on Twitch. Yeah, winery would be the place where they take the grapes, but usually the actual the grape, where they grow the wine is like outside. It's on the hills, and so this is like a bend in the River Mosel, and there's like it's relatively steep up, and there's like all this wine, and then on the top there's like an airport, and there's like this Bundeswehr bunker complex, and they were down, I think, on the other side of the river in like a little closest town in Traben-Trarbach, in a restaurant, and were eating, and at the same time, they actually, in a coordinated operation, they arrested all of the people who ran this hoster in the restaurant, and at the same time they stormed the bunker, which was actually, it has like a perimeter fence, and it's like the old Bundeswehr thing, and they had secured that very well, which is like one of the reasons why they were so adamant that they couldn't be stormed by police. But anyway, they got they had air support, the whole 9 yards, anti-terror units. They drove down the gates with tanks. I think they blew up the doors. They went in and got everything. And it's pretty amazing. It's a pretty amazing story. And so they arrested 8 people, 7 of which have been in Germany. We call it Untersuchungshaft. It's when you go to jail. So in Germany it works like this. You get a warrant for somebody, then you arrest them, then you put them. There's special jails basically. So if you can prove that if they're just normal people, and it's not something where you think, okay, they're going to run away to another country, or it's likely that they're going to run away. They actually they stay at home until the lawsuit starts. But if this is organized crime or something like this, they will arrest them and put them in their special jails until the suit starts, until the whole proceedings start. And generally there are certain length of time you can put somebody in jail in this Untersuchungshaft, or U-Haft as we call it, investigative arrest. I think he would translate it. And usually it's not that long. It's a few months. They've been in that for a year now because all special proceedings and stuff. Before I go any further, I should probably explain why I'm talking about this on a privacy show. I mean, first of all, it's an important story and it's interesting. But I think it's also very important because, it's generally you would say like it's a crime story, it's an IT security story. But this kind of stuff always intersects. Like these hosters, people could get the idea, okay, that's a bulletproof hoster, they're secure. They say they will protect my data from the state and investigative, police investigations. Now, me as a journalist, so I'm running or I have actually, Tuta Nota runs my whistleblower contact form, right? But, when I was at Heise, we set one up, or I did a lot of the work. We set up a secure drop instance. And this is something I would be interested in. Now, I can't run that myself. I can't have like a secure data center where I could put the server. But, I could get the idea that, look, if these people are saying they're protecting my data from the police investigating stuff, that would be the ideal place for me to put a secure drop server instance, right? And it's always the same with technologies like this, Tor and anonymity services, encryption. That's always also used for crime. It's always used for crime, but it's also used for legitimate purposes. So I'd always looked from the beginning. I'd looked at the Cyberbunker story as something. Well, they busted legitimate terrorists, legitimate criminals, but. They might have caught some innocent people, and that was always an interesting angle for me. By the way, the police was very adamant that they knew that there was something untoward going on with this. I think they were running it since 2014, and it was shut down in, I think, October 2019. Oh no, last year, end of last year. Anyway, so they were running it for quite a few years, but the police was pretty much from the beginning onto them, because they said on their website that they would host anything except terrorism and child pornography. And as so yesterday, I went to the trial yesterday is when the trial started, and I talked to the Oberstaatsanwalt, so basically district attorney, who is running the prosecution. And he said, well, when somebody says that, they're kind of saying we'll host all the other illegal stuff. Right, as long as it's not child porn or terrorism, we'll host all the other illegal stuff, and that would mean about it, and so you would be doing something illegal yourself. But I always thought this is an interesting story from a privacy perspective. But as it turns out, probably not, because talking to this, so the police very early on, not very early on, so. This raid happened, and then a few months later, they were analyzing all the data they had gotten from the servers, and they actually had a statement where they said that they didn't find any legal stuff on these servers. And I always thought that was unlikely. So I asked the DA yesterday again, directly, this time face to face. I was like, so did you until now you had a lot of time to look at this data? Did you find anything legal? He's like, no, we looked. So they have 2 petabytes of data. I was like, no, so far we haven't found anything legal, which is quite interesting. But still, I still think this is an important story because, you might, as from a privacy standpoint, you might be looking at, the same kind of services you look for if you want like a secure email, like a privacy-focused email service or a privacy-focused file storage, or even if you want, if you are like, let's say you're a dissident in some country and you want hosting that is protected from government interference, then you will look at the same services, or the services that you use might get into under fire from police and from police investigations or from the state, because they're not only hosting your stuff, but criminals might be using it as well. So in the end, I'll come when I've explained to you how this all happened and everything in the whole setup. I'll get a bit into why this is an important landmark case in Germany for hosters in general, but also what the difference is if you have a privacy-oriented hosting service, how they should behave to be within the law and how that contrasts to how these people behaved. Now, just to finish the whole setup, so yesterday the case started, and yesterday basically was the first day of proceedings, and the only thing they did was the prosecution read out the indictments, which took over an hour, and I'll explain to you later where that is. But so this trial is actually set to be the proceedings are ongoing every Monday and Thursday till this end of December 2021. So it's a huge case, and it's a landmark case. It's never, something like this has never happened in Germany. So what the prosecution is trying to do here is they're trying to so they've indicted the people running the hosting service for knowing and aiding and abetting crimes that their clients did. So they're not saying they themselves did illegal stuff like, selling drugs. They're just saying you hosted these services that all this selling of drugs, for example, was going on, happening via, and you knew about it. And because of that, we're indicting you. And they're actually, so the indictment is for, this is very German, bear with me here, Bilden einer kriminellen Vereinigung. So the creation, I think you would translate it, the creation of a criminal enterprise or a criminal organization. So basically the case is, the prosecution is trying to prove the only reason you created this hosting service was to profit from other people doing illegal stuff, and you knew they were doing illegal stuff. Now, this is the first time anything like this has ever happened. And the DA, so this is actually, I think they know what they're doing. The state prosecution knows what they're doing. The Oberstaatsanwalt, the DA running this, is from Koblenz. He is the head of in Germany, every federal state has like these, they're called Kompetenzzentrum Cybercrime. It's also very German. A competence center for cybercrime. So because they recognize that the police and the local state prosecutors don't really, not all of them are up on technology, and they have like these centers whenever cybercrime is concerned, they will just hand the case to them. So because they know what they're doing, right? They don't want some random state attorney like having to figure out what the hell Tor is and how the hell, I don't know, encryption works and shit like that. So I think these guys know what they're doing. They're saying this is all very special and all this. Now the reason this is very special is very simple. These people were really, really brazen. To think that you could run a hoster like this in Germany, it's just plain nuts. I mean, all these hosting services are usually run from, I don't know, East Ukraine, some other, East, Soviet country or something. Any place where there's like turmoil, like preferably like Crimea or something, where there's a war going on, where you can bribe the police and the investigators, that would be good. Or some random island where, you're like tax dodger island, stuff like that. That's where you run hosting services like this from. Certainly not in Germany. And then certainly you don't advertise. I mean, you kind of have to advertise on your website what you're doing, because otherwise it's the internet. Otherwise you won't get clients. But then you must know that the police knows about this too. And like, they were incredibly brazen. So this DA guy says they didn't even, like, most of the data wasn't encrypted. And I was like, he was telling me this, and I was looking at him, I was like, what? Seriously? And he's like, yeah, he was like laughing. He's like, I guess they thought they were secure in the bunker. And I'm like, yeah, you have a bunker, but it's the German state, right? They built that bunker in the first place. They have tanks, right? And the operation took, it took years. I'll explain in a bit, because they kind of have to prove all these things. But they also had they had air support, right? They were spying on them for like months, probably years. They were observing the whole place. They had high level, planes fly over. They had an informant in the bunker, which is why they knew that they were all in the restaurant. So they had some guy who I think got hired as a gardener. So in Germany, this is quite interesting. If you're from the US, in Germany, it's quite hard for the police to have informants in these criminal organizations, because we have very, very, very strict entrapment laws in Germany. So it's actually, if a police officer who is like undercover somewhere in a case, actually, if there's just a hint of entrapping somebody, the whole case falls apart. And they're not allowed to do anything illegal. So they can't be really, like, they couldn't have hired, like, he couldn't have put somebody in as an administrator, because he would have had to administer the service, which would have been illegal, and then the whole case falls apart. So they had to have somebody right on the outside, but obviously where he knew who came in and stuff like that. And there's like interesting reports on this also. They were living, like, the administrators were living in the bunker, and like they were how nerdy and dirty, and it's like, I think this is probably from the informant was saying, like, this is like college kids, like college dorm rooms on steroid. It's like completely messed up. And they were bragging, like, and hating on each other and trolling each other, and then always when they were out, like in the restaurants in that little town, they were bragging how they were all untouchable, whatever. I mean, completely brazen. It was completely clear that that this whole thing was going to collapse. But it's a very interesting story. So there are 8 defendants. So 7 of them have been in Untersuchungshaft for about a year. So in jail. One of them, so 2 of them, like one of the defendants was, during the whole time they're investigating, was a minor. At least in the case of, criminal law, there's, I think it goes up to 21, I think, in Germany, depending on what is at stake. And one of the defendants was a minor for part of the time, although that defendant is in jail. The other one is outside of jail, and now just has to turn up for every Monday and Thursday for the court proceedings. But I think 4 of them were Dutch. I mean, the guy who had this whole idea actually had a foundation in the Netherlands that he bought this bunker from with that money, and apparently he spent 450,000 euros on the bunker, and like putting the computer equipment in there, which is quite a lot. So that was one of the reasons the prosecution said, I mean, they knew from the beginning that this was going to be a criminal enterprise, because that's not, like, you can't build a hosting service like this and then expect to recoup all that money. So really interesting. really interesting stuff. And the thing that is they have about 250,000 individual crimes documented. I think most of this, I mean, they have all the, they went in there and got all the service. So they've got all the client data, they've got all this stuff. But most of this they knew beforehand. So they knew, so they have 7 different, they call this complex, clusters of criminal activity that they're actually putting on these people. 4 of those are kind of darknet, in air quotes, underground forums, most of them Onion, Tor, hidden services that other people ran that were hosted on these servers. One of them is called Flugsvamp 2.0, which apparently according to the prosecution, the Swedish police estimates that 90% of all the drug trade in Sweden at some point was happening over this website. So these 250,000 different illegal acts are mostly, drug, somebody selling, 5 grams of cocaine or 10 grams of marijuana to somebody else. And it's all of this. And they knew about this way before they took this place down, because they have all these other cases where they actually, they have indicted all these people running these platforms, and then some of the buyers as well, where they basically, intercepted packages and could then prove that this person had bought this from there. And also they had, undercover agents ordering. This is something they can